So in this video, I'd like to finally get into the process of locating the GNS3 software. Where do I go to find the software, and how do I download it? And what does it look like as I'm installing it on my laptop? So let's talk a little bit about that stuff. So to begin with, if you haven't already gone to their website, you're going to want to go to gns3.com. As you can see right here, gns3.com. And if you haven't already done so, you're going to want to click on Login and Sign Up. And from here, you're going to type in your username and password that you're going to want to use. So it's free. No, Visa or MasterCard required, but it's going to be necessary in order to download the software. Also, it will give you access to the GNS3 community. So you can see questions that people have posed and the answers. You can pose your own questions, read some documents there. So go ahead and log in. And then from here, you've got a couple of choices. You could either go up here to where it says software, or you could just click on the big blue free download button. And you're going to want to select the platform that you're going to want to use. Now, let me just make a quick mention here. All of the demonstrations I'm going to be doing are based on Microsoft Windows. However, once you've got GNS3 installed and running, it pretty much operates the exact same way. The GUI looks exactly the same, whether it's on Windows or a Mac or Linux. Very little variation there. So pretty much everything I'm going to teach you will be applicable no matter which of these platforms you're using. Now, two general high-level differences right here. So if you click any of these download buttons here, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be downloading GNS3 and running it as what we call the local server option. So really what that means is that you're going to be running GNS3 directly on top of your operating system. It's no different than when you're opening up your web browser, whether it be Google Chrome or Internet Explorer, or you're opening up your email application or your instant messaging chat application. All of those are examples of software that opens up and runs directly on top of your operating system, whether your operating system is Windows or Mac or Linux or whatever it may be. So what's the other option? Well, you can see down here, and I'll hover over this a little bit to make it a little bit larger. Download the GNS3 VM, virtual machine. What's that referring to? Well, if you're going to use that, one additional dependency in order to use that is to have some sort of VM software, like either VirtualBox or VMware. Now, VirtualBox is free, VMware Player is free, and then there's other versions of VMware that are not free. But you're going to have either VirtualBox or VMware to use the GNS3 VM. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, okay, well, sounds like it'd be sort of, why would I go through all that extra hassle to download the GNS3 the GNS3 VM that's going to require these other software, VirtualBox or VMware, when instead I could just bypass all that and just, click download right here for Windows or download right here for Mac. So, why would I download the GNS3 VM? Okay, if your sole intention of using GNS3 is simply to build Cisco router and switch topologies, you just want to practice Cisco routing and switching, and that's it, then in that particular case, there probably isn't not very much of a need to download the VM, the GNS3 VM. You can probably just run it as a local server by clicking download right here. Where the GNS3 VM really comes into play, where it's really useful to you, is once you start getting into more advanced technologies where you're going to be using other operating systems like maybe June OS or something else like that. Or maybe you want to integrate other things into your topology. Maybe, for example, you want to integrate some sort of firewalls or adaptive security appliances or some network monitoring software applications. Most of the time when you're doing that kind of fancy, extra advanced stuff, you need to run that alongside the GNS3 VM. It doesn't really work when GNS3 is running as the local server option directly on top of your operating system. But if you're watching this series of videos, that's probably not your intent. You're probably watching this because you want to create Cisco routing and switching topologies to help you prepare for your CCNA and your CCNP, and even to some extent, your CCIE as well. So in that particular case, just go ahead and click right here on download, and then it will actually download, as you can see. I'll go ahead and make that a little bit larger. Not very large, only about 43.6 megabytes. And as of the time of this recording, the current latest revision is 1.4.4. Okay, and then once you've downloaded that, you can go ahead and close up your browser and then go to wherever that download was. In this particular case, I've placed my downloads here under, I'll go ahead and talk about these other things in just a second, under GNS3, and here's the 144 all-in-one. So you can see what those various flavors look like. And here's the GNS3 virtual machine, what that would look like. So I'm just going to go ahead and double click on that to open it up. And let's go ahead and walk through the process. Okay, I can close this. And so now we start entering the GNS3 setup wizard. And yes, I want to agree to the license, otherwise I can't use the software. Go ahead and hit next. Now, I just want to spend a little bit of time right now talking about this because you can see that in addition to GNS3, you're going to get a whole bunch of other stuff as well. Now, all this by default is selected. You can unselect some of it. Some of it is required. Generally, the recommendation is just let it install all this stuff, but if you're like me, you say, hey, I want to know what each one of these things is. What is it installing on my system? So let me just take a little bit of time to talk about each one of these. First of all, WinPCAP, what is that? Well, right here directly from winpcap.org. Basically what WinPCAP is, it's a driver. It's a driver that you install in your laptop, and what it allows your laptop to do is, if you've been studying networking at all, whether you're preparing for your CCNA or anything else, you know that when your Ethernet cable is plugged into your laptop, that Ethernet NIC on your laptop is seeing all kinds of Ethernet frames, not necessarily just frames for you, frames for lots of other people connected to your broadcast domain. Now, the default behavior of your NIC card is, as every single frame comes in, the NIC card says, is this for me? Is this something I need to pay attention to, or is this not for me? If it's not for me, it just deletes it. It ignores it. And so the CPU within your laptop never even sees that frame because it's not for you. But when you're doing your network training and learning these protocols, a lot of times one of the best ways to learn protocols is to open up something called a packet sniffer. For example, Wireshark is a classic example of a free packet capture tool. And the intent behind software like that is that you do want to see everything. You want to see every single frame, every single packet that your NIC card saw, even stuff that isn't necessarily meant for you. For example, if you want to connect to two routers and see routers doing EIGRP or OSPF, that's not for you. That's not for your laptop. So even if your NIC card saw those packets, it would never display in your packet capture tool, in your Wireshark tool, because it would never get to your CPU. That's where WinPCAP comes into play. When you have WinPCAP installed, it can put your network interface card into something called promiscuous mode, which is simply a fancy way of saying, hey, NIC card, every single thing that you see, send it to the processor. Everything. So basically the way all this works hand in hand is that when you open up your packet capture tool, like Wireshark, for example, Wireshark in turn invokes the services of WinPCAP. And Wireshark says, hey, WinPCAP, I'm a process running here. Please put the NIC card into promiscuous mode and forward to me every single packet, every single frame that you see. So without WinPCAP, your packet capture tools would be pretty much useless because all they would be able to display for you are packets leaving from your laptop or packets destined to your laptop. You wouldn't be able to see all that other stuff you want to see, like CDP and BGP and VTP and all that other stuff. So that's why we need WinPCAP. What else is in here? Well, we've got Wireshark, so that's nice. Wireshark is a free download, but fortunately for us, it's already built into GNS3. Now, if you already have Wireshark on your laptop, don't worry. When it gets to this step, it'll say, hey, I already see it, and you can actually cancel out of it and cancel that section. The SolarWinds Response Time Viewer is a really cool tool. Basically what this does, it's sort of like a high-level tool that sorts and categorizes and classifies your traffic. Because if you've ever worked with Wireshark, where it's capturing everything, within just like a minute, you can have thousands and thousands of packets, just depending on how busy your network is. And as you're scrolling through all that stuff, it can be kind of hard to see, if your overall question is, what's going on in my network? What are the typical types of protocols and applications are running right now? And what's the response time? When a packet comes out, how fast is the reply coming back? I just want a sort of overview of what's going on in my network. And with Wireshark, kind of hard to get that information. Now, of course, there's all sorts of filters and stuff built into Wireshark to give you that information, but with the SolarWinds Response Time Viewer, it works hand in hand with Wireshark. So when you've got Wireshark running and you stop it and you've got all these miscellaneous packets that you've captured, you can save that Wireshark capture file. You can save it to your laptop or your hard drive or something. Then you can open up the SolarWinds Response Time Viewer to view that capture file, and it gives you a real high level, like, TCP conversations, HTTP conversations. It gives you a good snapshot of what's really going on in your network. So it's a really useful tool to have. Dynamips. Gotta have that. So if we're running GNS3 as a local server, in other words, we downloaded it just like any other application, and we're gonna run it directly on our laptop just like any other software application, then Dynamips is a critical component. That is the emulator. That's the thing that's taking that Cisco software image that you're using and making the software image believe that it's really sitting inside of a router. Dynamips is the emulation engine that emulates the router. Without it, the software image wouldn't do anything. Cisco's software just running on your laptop, you can't open it, you can't run it because your laptop isn't a router. Dynamips makes the software believe it's operating within a router, so you gotta have that. QEMU stands for Quick Emulator, and as you can see here in the description, a very useful thing for this is if you're using an adaptive security appliance. So if you're studying for like your CC NA security or your CCNP security, you're gonna have to know about adaptive security appliances and firewalls and stuff. And that doesn't come with GNS3 by default. So to get those sort of security appliances, those firewalls, you have to run them with QEMU. And QEMU is installed by default, as you can see here. VPCS, very useful. As you can see, it's the virtual PC simulator. A lot of useful things you can do. So you can build a GNS3 topology of routers and switches and then drag and drop these virtual PCs in there. And they're not running like a full-blown version of Windows or anything like that. As a matter of fact, there's no GUI in these virtual PCs at all. But what you can do is you can have them start up like TCP streams and UDP streams and ping back and forth and do all kinds of really sort of cool stuff with them to test out your network, to see if your network is operating the way you thought it would operate. So it's a great thing that's built in here. CPU limit. I actually have something to talk about that. Here is CPU limit. So this comes directly from cpulimit.sourceforge.net. So just real simple explanation, just like it sounds. It's an application, it's a program which attempts to limit the CPU usage of whatever application is using it. So when GNS3 is using CPU limit, it limits the amount of CPU. So it's pretty clear there. So what else do we get? In addition to that, well, there's GNS3 itself. That's the whole reason why you're here. SuperPuTTY is an example of a terminal emulator. Now this comes packaged in with GNS3. If you're wondering, what is a terminal emulator? Well, the terminal emulator is the software that gives you the command line. So for example, in order to get into the command line interface of a router or a switch so you can see your commands and type in your commands, the software, the front end that's giving you that window is called a terminal emulator. And there's lots of different applications that are terminal emulators. SuperPuTTY is one, HyperTerminal is one you may have heard of, Secure CRT is another one. So by default, GNS3 uses PuTTY, but if you prefer Secure CRT or HyperTerminal or something like that, I'll show you in an upcoming video how you can change GNS3 to use the terminal emulator that you want to use. And then lastly, we have Tight VNC Viewer right here. I'm not really going to go into great detail on that. That's definitely more of a intermediate / advanced topic. But this is basically a way that if you have GNS3 running on one system and you're on a different system, maybe across town or across the state or something, you can still bring up the GUI on your system even though the actual GNS3 server is running on a different laptop or a different server that's physically different than the one that you are on right now. So Tight VNC Viewer allows you to do that. So we're just going to go ahead and install all that stuff and click Next. And let it install into the default directory where it wants to go. All right, right now I'm getting a little warning saying, hey, WinPCAP is already on this machine. In this case, I'm just going to cancel out of it. Now, if you don't get this, remember, you definitely want WinPCAP to be installed. But in my case, I've already got it. right here. So I'm just going to cancel out of that because I don't need it to be installed or overridden what I've already got. Now, same thing. Wireshark, if I sat around here for like a minute or two, it would download Wireshark, but I'm going to cancel that because I've already got Wireshark installed. I don't need to install it again. SolarWinds Response Time Viewer, once again, I'm going to cancel out of that because I already have it. I downloaded it prior to this video. So I'm going to abort that installation. And now it's just going to download everything else. All that other good stuff that I need. And as you can see, it doesn't take a whole long time. And that's it. Next. Now you're prompted, would you like to get your free license of the SolarWinds Standard Toolset? Hey, definitely want to click yes here because as you can see, it's a $200 value. You get it for free. Hey, why not, right? And now when you click next, it'll actually bring up the SolarWinds website here where you can register to get that free tool set. I'm not going to do that right now. And then lastly, it prompts you to start GNS3. You'll be directed to the GNS3 welcome page where they kindly give you their gratitude for downloading the software. And at this point, we are now into what's called the GNS3 Setup Wizard. Now I'm going to go into that in the next couple of videos. I'm going to walk you through step by step of how to use the Setup Wizard and what your various options are. But at this point, we have successfully located the GNS3 software on the internet, on the GNS3 website. We have downloaded it to our laptop and we have begun the installation process.